Hello there everybody and welcome back to Movie Squirm. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 2024 film Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and this is directed by Gil Keenan and stars Paul Rudd, Carrie Coon, McKenna Grace and Finn Wolfhard, and honestly a lot of other people. The Ghostbusters continue to battle ghosts in New York City, but a much larger threat is soon on the horizon in the form of an ice god. By the way guys, just to let you know, I have reviewed all 4 Ghostbusters movies leading up to this, so if you want to check out any reviews for any of the movies in this franchise, I'll leave it in the link down below. Now, I quite enjoyed Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I was interested to see where the paths of these new characters were going to lead to. And I gotta be honest, for the first hour of this movie, I was kind of scratching my head a little bit and wondering, what are they trying to do here? And I'll get onto this more in just a minute, but the second half of the film was definitely one of the biggest positives for Frozen Empire, because this is when it started to feel like a real Ghostbusters movie, where they actually started busting ghosts, and busting makes us all feel good now, doesn't it? Sorry, I had to put that in there. But seriously, this is where the entertainment factor come in, and I started to have a really great time with the film. And that's where I felt like it was more fitting with the franchise. But I do like the location change back to New York here. Obviously in Afterlife we went to this small town location countryside setting, and I do think it worked a lot for that film, especially the way Jason Reitman utilised it. But it can only really work for one movie. I even said it in my Afterlife review. I don't think you can make a lot of Ghostbusters movies take place in remote locations, and it just felt right to go back to New York, because this is the location, the city, where we know and love these movies from. And a lot of this movie does take place in the exterior of New York City, so car chases will be flying around skyscrapers and stuff and going from block to block, and it all just works. And I do like the fact that we're back in the firehouse here, which we haven't really been a part of for the last 2 Ghostbusters films, but here it makes a welcome addition back, and that is the Ghostbusters home. So it was nice to see it all in working order again. Now, there are a ton of characters in this movie, and once again I will speak about that in just a second, but I gotta say, this feels like a really important role for Dan Aykroyd. It feels like his sort of comeback within himself there, really. I feel like he really, got into this and wanted to bring the Ray character back, because I do feel like, as good as he is in them first couple of films, he is more of not a side character, but he feels like he's pushed a little bit away because Bill Murray takes center stage and he's the Ghostbuster everyone loves. But even in that film, Peter Venkman says that Ray is the heart of the Ghostbusters, and he truly is. So it was nice to see him bring the Ray character back in such a big way here, and he plays an integral part of the story. But there was one moment where the Ecto-1 flies past his little shop that he owns there, with the sirens going off and stuff, and he just kind of looks outside and has a little smile to himself, and it brings back all them memories of when he loved being a Ghostbuster, and you can tell it's very much a part of him. But I didn't just feel that within this character in the movie, it kind of felt like it was part of Dan Aykroyd himself there. I gotta say, a lot of the comedy here actually really worked for me. There was a lot of times I found myself laughing at this film. Okay, some of it doesn't land, but I'd say about 80% of this comedy that they go for made me laugh, basically. And it does feel a little bit Marvel-esque within the writing. When you see the comedy in them movies, that's kind of what it felt like here. It was comedy for modern audiences. But I like that type of humour, but you're never going to capture that comedic balance that they got in the 80s and what them 4 characters were able to portray. I think that is just lightning in a bottle. So it does feel very different to that, but I still found this movie quite humorous. Now, Kumail Nanjiani plays a character in this movie, and honestly, he just came from nowhere. He hasn't been in any of the movies before this. He just was written for this film, and I gotta say, this is the definition of someone stealing the show, because every time this guy was on screen, he cracked me up. I just had such a fun time with this character, but he is also a very important part of what Frozen Empire's story is going for. So he's not exactly throwaway. He's not just there for the comedy. He actually, is an interesting personality because of how important he is, and how much, he throws out some of the great comedic one-liners. You know, his timing is perfect and stuff. And he was my favourite character in the movie by far. I don't know how much that says for the other main characters who we all know and love in the Ghostbusters franchise, and they were okay, but for me, he was the standout. I gotta say, there were some very much smaller characters that appeared in Ghostbusters 1 and 2 there that made a little bit of a cameo appearance, and I thought it was really fun to see this, especially after just watching all of these Ghostbusters movies leading up to this. I mean, fan service doesn't work for everyone, but it sure did for me, especially in this film. There's a few cool creative ghost designs here that I hadn't really seen before. You know, but obviously we do get the usual ones coming back, like Slimer, who's kind of the mascot of this Ghostbusters franchise now, isn't he? But one that really stood out to me was one called Possessor. It's this little tiny sort of orb thing, best way to describe it, which just jumps from object to object, and the Ghostbusters have kind of got it locked in this room. And one minute it's possessing a Hoover, then it will jump into a telephone and start dialing itself and stuff, and it was just going from object to object every couple of seconds. But it was so fun to see these things come alive, and it isn't just that scene. There's a few scenes in the movie where this ghost is kind of playing a part, and I always thought it was fun to see Possessor, you know, just causing carnage, really. Now, I do have a bit of a mixed thought on this. It's a positive and a negative, really. But I gotta talk about the writing here. Now, there are so many characters here in this movie. The original Ghostbusters, of course, are in here. We've got this new bunch of Ghostbusters, but there's also new characters introduced into this movie. And there's a lot going on. And like I said, the second half of the film was a lot better for me. The first half is quite a lot of exposition. There's a lot of story building within different characters and the little side stories they're going on. And some of it will not be appreciated until that second act where they start coming together. But some of them actually don't. That's why it's a little bit of a mixed aspect for me. Now, the ones that do come together, I do think it was done well, and it is a very ambitious plot that they go for. You know, they're trying to cram a lot in and make it work, and I respect them for doing that and trying to push it a little bit. But there are certain side characters or story arcs that just kind of just go nowhere. And it's like, why did you even bother with it anyway? It's kind of like you had to give this character something to do. My biggest one I am speaking of is kind of Finn Wolfhard's character, Trevor. I mean, I really thought he was going to be the lead of these Ghostbusters by now, or playing a much bigger part. They kind of set his character up in Afterlife to be that. But he's kind of just throwaway. There's not much for him to do here at all, really. Also, the villain in this film, a lot of the story beats have to come together for this villain to suffice and come into this world, and it does feel like it is a very unrealistic set of sequences for this to happen. And I was just like, yeah, maybe we could have come up with something a little bit simpler and more believable for this villain to come to light, really. Now, one of my biggest negatives here was a side story with a certain character befriending a ghost. It just didn't work for me every time it was on screen for two reasons. And one, which I didn't really realise until the end of the movie, really, or towards the end, was a very unrealistic set of events have to happen for a certain outcome, and it all involves this side story, like I was just talking about before. But also, it just kind of makes a mockery of ghostbusting, really. I mean, this character is befriending a ghost, they're getting to know each other, and in all the other four films, if you remember, a lot of build-up is happening. These ghosts are meant to be creepy, characters are meant to be kind of scared of them, but here it just took all of that away with these two character interactions. And when I say that, a lot of the ghosts are just running loose at the start of this movie. There is no build-up to them, really. There is a build-up for the main villain, but ghosts are a common thing here now, not like the other four films. You know, they have to sort of build up to it. But here, no, they're just thrown in, and the Ghostbusters are the booming, really, with their business. And that just felt a little bit off to me. And I gotta say, the villain here is just not that memorable to me. He's kind of throwaway compared to Vigo the Carpathian and Gozer the Gozerian in the first two movies. I don't think this is going to go down in classic Ghostbusters folklore, in all honesty. Now, one of the reasons for that is once this villain turns up, there isn't just much time for him to do his thing. I mean, I feel like the movie quickly got towards the end and sort of wrapped up. And look, I'm a big fan of 90 minutes movies. When movies are over 2 hours, I'm kind of like, okay, another one of them long movies that we're going to get that just seem to come out every week now. But I do feel like Ghostbusters Frozen Empire could have benefited with an extra 20 minutes there just to let scenes breathe and, let the viewer take it all in, especially with the villain. So, yeah, it was kind of just over a little bit too quick once the movie got going. However, guys, I still had a lot of fun with Frozen Empire despite a bunch of problems, but I don't think it's going to be near the top of my favourite films in the franchise, but it's not a bad franchise anyway. I don't think there's really a bad movie in this series of films, to be honest. So, yeah, it's a good time. It's a good popcorn flick that, a lot of people can have fun with. And I do think this is aimed at more newcomers to Ghostbusters. I think it'll work for them a hell of a lot more than the vintage Ghostbuster fans, let's put it that way. I'm just going to go ahead and rate this movie now. I'm going to give Ghostbusters Frozen Empire a 7 out of 10. This series aims to please, and I think this movie done just that. Okay, guys, at the end of these reviews, I always like to leave a little fun fact. Now, a fun fact for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is that Gary, who played by Paul Rudd, holds up a VHS tape of Cannibal Girls from 1973, and this was actually directed in real life by Ivan Reitman, the director of the first two Ghostbusters movies. Okay, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this review. What do you think of Frozen Empire? Please let me know down below, and I'll get back to you all, I promise. If you want to check out more of my Ghostbusters reviews, it'll be in the link down below. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to this channel. It would really help me out. Thanks so much, guys. You take care, and I'll see you on the next video.